Hey everybody, this is Gregorio from Tokyo for DIY Tokyo for our Totoro costume. And this is part 2. If you saw part 1, I am hoping you are seeing now part 2, where we're here to create the ears and the tail for the costume. And one thing I forgot to say for the materials is you're going to need some cotton batting in order to fill the ears and the tail. So thank you for watching and check out the rest of the tutorial. Now, one thing I forgot to say for the materials that you need, you're going to want to have some cotton, some quilt batting, cotton batting to put into the ears to plump up a little bit and for the tail to give it volume. So that's one thing I forgot to say in the beginning. For the ears, take the gray felt that you have, and I estimate that it should be about, I think it should be about 16 centimeters by 7 centimeters wide. Okay, so you don't want them too long, you don't want them too short. And also, again, you're going to have your craft wire in order for us to kind of make a crown and to be able to have a place to add the ears to stick out from. So I already have the width of this fabric here at about the 7 centimeters. So at this point here, this is the point where we're gonna make it a little thick, just a little thick, because when we sew it from the inside and flip it inside out, it's going to lose some of that thickness. And for the bottom, make sure you leave enough space so that you have a place to turn it inside out. Okay, so now we have the 4 pieces here. So right now, of course, it doesn't matter when you see the fabric marker, because if we sew on this side and we flip it inside out, you won't see any of it. And again, always start and stop with a back stitch. Okay, so now that we have our 2 ears, let's try to turn them inside out. So you can use the tip of the scissors, you can use a chopstick, you can use anything that's kind of pointed, but something that's not so sharp that's going to break the seams. So now that we've cut the ears out, sewn them, and flipped them inside out, now we're going to have our Totoro ears. After that, we're going to take some of the cotton batting and shove some of it in here. Now, just to have a little bit of plumpness, and also that there's something inside for the wire to kind of catch while we try to put that in there. Okay, so just cut up some of this. You don't have to be precise about it, and push it in. Okay, so now with our crafting wire, we're gonna kind of make like a crown to put on top of our head. So it's not gonna go on like a headband, it's gonna go on like a crown that's gonna be placed on top of here. So it might be a little tricky to explain this, but please bear with me. So you're gonna wanna make sure you have about the length of the ear that's available here. So you're gonna have 1 point, and then you're going to want to have it to wrap around your head so it fits like a crown. That's like a 2nd point, but you need a little bit, you need to have a little bit here because we're going to wrap it a few times. So have another kink right there. It's about, what, 2 inches, 1.5 inches. So you have your ear, you have your head. This is about the amount that you can use for wrapping. And then you're going to want to have the same amount for the other side. So pretend you need to have another 2 inches to wrap around. Make a little kink in there. And also then you need to have your length of the ear. Okay? So again, all of these measurements will be based on your size of your head. So I can't give you any specific measurements except for you have to go based off of the crown of your head and how long you made your ears. So now that we have the amount of wire that we should need, I'm gonna add just a little extra just in case we need it. Otherwise we have to cut it all over again. Okay, so we have that. Take our pliers that have the wire cutting on there, snip that off, and then let's take the full end and again wrap it around your head like as if it's a bandana. Okay, so wrap it around your head, take your fingers as a placement, and then you're going to want to twist it to wrap around here. So we're twisting it around here, and on the other side twist it the opposite direction, and we're trying to get some distance between the two. So wrap it away, because when we put it on, we want to have our ears separated, right? So now that we've had the wire, and now I have just placed on the ears. So if you see, it stays in my head as we've made it like a crown. If you have a little bit longer hair, you can use some bobby pins in order to secure it even more. But as you can see right now, they're placed on there. Now later, I'm gonna ask you to put some more glue. So the glue gun, we're gonna seal off the ends and also try to have it to kind of stay on there, because you know, it is a little bit secure because the cotton batting has been kind of pressed against the wire, so it's not necessarily easy, you know, it's there, it can come off, but it's still generally secure. But we're gonna do that later. Next, I'm going to show you the leaf that is put onto Totoro's head. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do it, but I'm going to put together a leaf. Now, if you look at Totoro, he's wearing a leaf. And this is one of the things that he has throughout the anime, especially at the introduction at the bus stop scene. He has a leaf instead of an umbrella, and that's when the girls give an umbrella. But we're gonna add this leaf here. If you look online, you can find some other images, but basically the leaf looks kind of like a heart-shaped type leaf with a stem added to it. So I just quickly sketched out on the paper. Basically, you draw a heart, and it's gonna have a second piece here, which will be the leaf stem. Okay, so take your green felt and just roughly sketch out exactly what you have here. But remember, the stem is a separate piece, so cut out a long rectangle. So a double length of this as a rectangle you'll cut out, and then we'll fold, and that will be put on the back part. Now you're going to cut out 2 pieces of this, and we're also going to add a piece of craft wire down the center, and so that it can have a kind of wave to it. So now that we've cut out the leaf pieces, we're going to sew around here just about 1/4 inch or so. But in the back side here, leave about 3 to 4 inches open so we can turn it inside out. And also, it'll have stitching on the outside when we mend this together, but I don't mind that. If you really want this to look super like pro looking, you might want to do the ladder stitch to make an invisible stitch so it's not visible. But for me, this is just a simple Halloween costume that I don't want to spend too much time on. And you know, you're gonna go out, it's not gonna be super bright where I'm gonna be going, you know, outside where everybody's hanging out, so no one's gonna really see those details in the back. So it's just my suggestion. So let's go to the sewing machine and sew these 2 pieces together. So now that we've sewn this, let's turn it inside out. This is the part that I hate the most, turning things inside out. And there is the leaf that will go on the head. So we're gonna get some more of our craft wire, and we're going to get a piece that'll go down the center. So mark off that point. Mark off that point that you want and cut it off. So how a regular leaf is, it has that center vein. So we're kind of going to do that center vein now. What I'm going to do first, I'm going to sew one line just off the center area, and then I will insert this to push up against it, and then we'll turn it and sew on the other side to try to keep it as close as possible. So you can use your regular foot, or you can use a zipper foot to try to get as close as possible here, but we just want to get that to stay in the center. Okay, so then we can be able to manipulate it to be in a certain shape. The one thing you can do, take your fabric marker and just put kind of like a dotted line down the center, just so you can keep a reference point on where you're sewing. Don't sew all the way up to this opening, because we're going to then put our stem, but also we have to insert the wire. Okay, so I would say start at least an inch or so out before you start sewing. Okay, so we've sewn one part here. Now I'm going to take the wire that we cut and insert. So now that you have the wire put in here and you have it pushed up against that seam we just sewed, we're going to sew on the opposite side of that. So again, we're going to make this channel where this piece of wire is going to stay in. So you might want to go slow, because the wire may not stay straight and you want it to stay as flush as possible. So go slow and push it against the seam as you are sewing. Okay, now we have our wire put in there, and we can bend it into any shape now. So on the back side, you're going to want to try to fold in the pieces that you had here, so at least it lies flush. You can simply take your long rectangular strip and fold it in half. I'm not going to sew it so that it's a tubular shape. I'm just going to have it as an aesthetic. It's going to look more like a loop, but for me it's okay. If you want, you can sew around the sides and try to flip it inside out. It'll be a little tedious because it'll be very thin, but it's up to you. And there we have our leaf for Totoro's head. So if you have chosen the option of using the leaf for the Totoro's ear set, you're going to want to hand sew now. It's going to maybe be just the tip area that you will sew to the wire frame here. So just go several times around in order to secure it, and then after that we're going to place the ears on here and glue the bottoms of them to kind of secure them in place. So we're going to put on the ears and we're going to glue the ends of it shut. So hopefully that will be enough to keep it in place. If you're going to do some hard partying, you might lose an ear. So you might want to put some extra glue on that. So now that you've glued on the ears, it should look something like this. So just put it on your head and here you go. Instant Totoro. What do you think? It's simple, it's felt, it's cheap, but people are gonna say, oh, you're so cute as Totoro. So the last thing we need for the Totoro costume is a tail. It's a very simple shape. You look online, you can look up for his tail. I don't have a tail picture here, but pretty much it is a kind of circular shape, and that's it. Pretty simple. So what I'm doing, I have here, this is a 30 by 30 inch piece of gray felt, and I'm just folding it in half, so it's about a 15 centimeter wide tail. And one thing that I'm doing is that I add the curves on the corner, and I'm making this kind of pie shaped slit here on the side. And here we're going to sew it together to kind of give this 3D effect. Since we already have half of it here, basically we don't have to sew this side. We're just gonna cut off here, cut down these lines, and then cut up here. Now that we've cut these pieces here, we're gonna take it to the sewing machine and we're gonna put it together. Put the two ends together and just sew this little piece here and do it for both sides. So as you can see here, it is now a 3D shape. Now let's take two sides. So these, the sides that you just sewed, will be on the outside currently, and we're just going to sew around here. Very simple. Always start and end with a back stitch. Okay, so now that we've sewn that, let's turn it inside out. It should be pretty simple because it's a large piece here. Then you can take your cotton batting and fill up about halfway. So the rest of this we're going to be putting onto the pants, and we're going to take the excess and fold it over. So, and what we're going to do also is make sure that it's long enough so that when you want to sew it onto the elastic area, we're going to bypass that so that the elastic and the waistband, the tying, how do you call it, the part that you tie won't get caught up in there. So it'll basically be a channel between here when we sew it. So now I was saying, for the pants part, so of course many of these will have the drawstrings on there, and you're going to want to make sure that when you tie it, they are not sewn in the back. So what we're going to do is that we're going to put the tail and have the excess fabric go over, and we're going to sew below the band line. And as we sew, we're going to pull this just a little bit so that when it can have some of that flatness, and when you release it, it'll go back. So here we already have the center point that exists here. So you're just going to want to line up your tail and flip it over, and then take it to the sewing machine and you can do a straight stitch, or you can do a zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitch will give us some elasticity, but the felt isn't elastic, so again, it's up to your preference. There you have it. You just have a simple Totoro tail now. Okay, so now you have the simple Totoro tail. So when you're wearing sweatshirt on top, it should cover this area just enough to poke out your Totoro tail. And also, since this is very basic stitching, it's a straight stitch, as well as the sweatshirt part where we sewed it on the Totoro fur belly part, since we're just using a simple straight stitch, after you make the costume and you use it and you don't think you're going to want it anymore, you can just take a seam ripper and easily take off that thread, and it shouldn't leave any mark, and you can just use your sweats as is. So everybody, thank you for watching, and if you do this simple costume tutorial on Totoro, please you can like me on my Facebook, and it's Soda Tokyo 1979, or on Instagram Soda Tokyo 1979. So please check it out, send me a message, and like and subscribe, and leave any comments. I'd like to hear from you. Gregorio from Tokyo.